This episode contains spoilers for The Wolf Among Us and the Fables comic book series.
Welcome back to the Push to Smart Water Cooler. Today we're returning to Fabletown to see how Bigby fares in his investigation. The third episode of The Wolf Among Us, A Crooked Mile, picks up in the bloody motel room right after the previous episode left off. With the magic mirror broken and Crane on the run, it's a race against time to retrace his steps. A race made more difficult by the infamous Crooked Man's intervention. To start off, can we just talk about that funeral scene? I mean, what a freaking tense way to open the episode. Mm-hmm. And it's not like traditionally like high stakes or anything. It was just nobody really likes each other in this situation. And you don't really belong, but at the same time, you have to be there.
The key tension and the reason that works is because you know that you don't belong there. And exactly. The way that they kind of need that was really well done, I thought.
And then when the Tweedle brothers came, I was just kind of like, no.
They're going to blame me.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to start breaking out in hives or something. It's too awkward. I can't do this. But yeah, it was very much like oh God, they're going to blame me. This isn't my fault.
This was not my intention. I came here because I had a lead, and the game made me come here, so don't blame me. And that was, like, one of my big problems with the episode, I guess we can get into more later, was I felt like every choice I made was wrong. And there were some parts where that was a very narratively satisfying wrong, like at the funeral, where everything was just slowly spiraling out of your control. But then there are other times where it was just like I'd choose something and he'd say it and I'd be like, that was not what I wanted to do. That's not my big B that I was trying to mold here. But that opener was definitely really well done.
So, and then from that, we find that the mirror is broken, Crane's taken a piece, or somebody has taken a piece. We don't quite know. And then we have to choose between three options: the bar, Crane's apartment, and then Tweedledee and Tweedledum's office. So which did you choose?
I went to the Trip Trap bar, which gave me some interesting closure with Grendel and Holly, but I was very surprised to see what you got when you went to the apartment first, because that seems to change a lot.
Yeah. So, I originally I went to the bar and the offices.
Me too.
But then I just had to know, because if you show up to the apartment later, the fireplace, there's been stuff that's been burned and there's just evidence that's missing. Right. So it was just very like, what have I done? Yeah.
I chose poorly.
Exactly. So I went to Crane's apartment and it was weird. On one hand, there wasn't as much as I was expecting to find.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, other than the joy of lovemaking and the Kama Sutra on his bookshelf, and then Bigby cracking the joke like, must not have came in handy, and I was like, that's not a very appropriate joke right now.
It's like a Resident Evil style burn. It's just like,
yeah. Actually, you hear about Bloody Mary first at the apartment.
Oh.
Yeah, so you get a message on Crane's answering machine, and she's like, I'm going to need the money, the Crooked Man needs it. And so you kind of get to know about his embezzling a bit more.
Interesting.
And then you find a love letter that he's written to Snow, and it's really creepy.
Oh my god.
And then you kind of get into the jack of it all, where he is trying to leave with, like, the glamour tubes and stuff, and trying to...
The black market magic.
Exactly.
Interesting. Is he the one that burns everything, or is that still Bluebeard?
No. It's still implied that Bluebeard is the one who did that. But you meet Jack, and you can let him go for information on the witch. But one thing that I thought was most interesting, and it might just be throwaway, I'm not sure, but Snow comes in, and as you're leaving, there's this tiny little scene where Jack is about to leave, and Snow's like, no, I need to talk to you first, and then it switches off to the next scene. And so I'm really curious if that has any narrative implications, like if they're going somewhere with Snow and Jack, like if they're or if it's just, she's covering the same bases that Bigby did.
Right. Oh, so you don't know what they said. You just cuts with her pulling him aside.
Exactly.
Interesting. I really like the way it kind of set off this investigation sequence with the timer, because everybody reiterates in dialogue, like, you only have a set amount of time and before he gets away. And then when you choose your location, a timer counts down kind of in the corner when it says you've arrived. And I wasn't sure how they would deal with that, because everything in Telltale games is so measured and timed, because they're so cinematic. You don't really have a choice to rush through things. But then when I got to the bar and Grendel's drunk and he's just, like, wasting time, I started getting really anxious, thinking, like, did I choose the wrong path? Is this going to result in a game over, like, after I do all this work because he's wasting my time? So that, I thought, was really interesting, provided some dramatic tension that we don't normally, and from a way we don't normally see in games. But I'm really kind of disappointed I didn't choose the apartment route, because it lays that kind of seed with Bloody Mary. And I don't know about you, but when they first started talking about the Crooked Man, I had no idea what they're talking about. And I actually, because everyone's acting like they know who he is, I actually went, like, paused the game, went to, like, a wiki to see, like, is this a character from the comics I forgot about? Like, why does everyone act like they... it's not.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's just acting like, oh, yeah, it's the Crooked Man. Like, it's like, okay, I'm supposed to know him, but I don't think that's established very well.
So how did you respond to Groggy Lily interaction at the bar?
Maybe that was one of the things that kind of was putting me off, and the idea that, like, nothing really seemed like Bigby-y to me. Like, there were some that were really coddling, and then there's some that were just really cold. And it's like, neither of those are really him. Like, he's kind of in the middle. Like, he does care about everybody and his job, but he's not going to make it seem more hopeful or happier than it actually is, I guess. He's not going to mince words, I suppose. Let's talk about Tweedledum and Tweedledee's apartment, or office. Because you get to meet Flytrap, or Flycatcher. I
actually really enjoyed that entire segment. Just seeing how their office was laid out, and how they had the stupid little, like, letters to each other and whatnot. It added a lot, just because, like, throughout the game, I just hate them so much. And it kind of added this level of humanity that I think, in the end, kept me from killing him at the end of the episode.
Right.
But Flytrap was great.
Flycatcher. I think I keep saying... I said the wrong thing to start. Sorry.
The guy with the flies was great.
I really liked finding Cinderella's dossier, and the idea that, like, nobody knew what was going on with her. And I keep like, this is the second time we found something from her that was classified, and it's like, please be like season 2, The Adventures of Cinderella. Please. So that was the enjoyment that I got out of that, and Flycatcher. And then you go to the witch, which was just a weird sequence.
It was one of those things where it was like, I know you're the witch.
Yeah.
They know you're the witch. Can we just get to the part where you're the witch? And then, I don't know, it was kind of difficult because this is her livelihood. And again, you're kind of playing into what we talked about in the last episode, where you kind of have the haves and the have-nots. And this is how she sustains herself. And this is also a huge part of her identity and who she was before they migrated to Fabletown. And so, would you take that away? Would you destroy kind of what makes her for the sake of, it's not within the law of the Fable verse? And
Snow White is so adamant about it. I was listening to the Polygon Friendless podcast, and they made a really good point about how Snow is kind of this moral barometer for it. And Snow will remember this kind of becomes a threat, and there's even parts when you're making those tough decisions where this camera will just cut to her. Like, she's not doing anything. She's just waiting expectantly for you to choose. But that's just kind of a reminder, like, oh, yeah, she's here. She's going to remember what I do. What am I going to do? So.
But there's also kind of, on one hand, it does seem a little kind of like she doesn't grasp how much this means to Annie Greenleaf.
Right.
But at the same time, she has those personal stakes of they've been selling glamours of Snow so that people can have sex with somebody
and then murder
who looks
them.
just like her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really fucked up.
Yeah.
And so I probably would want to burn that shit down too. So
yeah, and then like you're in a position trying to control Big B and thinking, you know, she's having to establish herself as being in charge. She's already been challenged earlier in the episode with Bluebeard, who's really easy to stand up to Bluebeard and say like, hey, listen to her. It's a lot harder with her. So this is kind of the game looking to you saying, so did you mean it? You know, like, this is do or die right here. Which did you end up doing? Did you burn the tree?
I didn't.
I did.
Oh my
and
God.
I regretted it
you terrible human. No, I don't know. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But ultimately, I didn't think that there was any correct choice. Like, I feel like I would have had a bit of regret for every choice I made.
Yeah.
Whether it was burning, I'd have a lot of regret for that. So you should feel bad.
Yes.
But, no, I'm just kidding. But whether it was burning the tree or having her work for them or just kind of letting her go. Which
I originally was like, well, can't we have her work for us? Because I was thinking, you know, in the comics, he has all his, like, secret, like, he is the golden goose. He has Cinderella running, like, the show for him and things. And so I was like, oh, well, maybe that's gonna, like, you know, make him hire her into his kind of shadow kind of organization type thing. Sorry, I can't use words today, but, okay. But then the way it came out, he was like really tentative about it and consulting Snow, like, well, why can't we can't we hire her? And it's like, that's not how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to say, okay, to Snow White and then like slip her your business card.
Exactly.
Like, that's the option I wanted. But yeah, that was definitely the toughest decision of the episode. And one of the things where I was just like, oh, this is all wrong. I messed up all of my, like, carefully laid plans up to this point.
So from that, we kind of get to the big end of the episode where just stuff starts going down. You find Crane at the Pudding and Pie, and he's trying to get Nerissa to break the spell on her.
Yeah, which we still don't know anything about. Yeah. The fact that these girls have this spell on them.
It's one of those things that they haven't even really explicitly stated.
Right.
Either, which I find kind of weird. But
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to how that works out. And then he has that creepy love confession to Snow. Yeah. And then they're leaving. And then, boom. Bloody Mary. Initial thoughts. What'd you think?
I love Bloody Mary.
Yeah.
I feel like she's not going to be used to her full potential in here, but like one of the things I loved about her introduction was the idea that like in the Fables universe, like or in the actual comics, you know, they do different genres for different story arcs. And while there's usually lip service paid to the fact that they're living amongst the mundane people and they have to be careful what the mundane people see, it usually feels like it's just like, oh, it's a murder mystery in an alternate universe with a bunch of fables living in New York.
Yeah.
Whereas Bloody Mary explicitly explains her connection to the Mundy world. And the fact that she perpetuates her own myth also plays into the idea that a fable's immortality is tied to how popular their myth is with the Mundys.
I know.
So the fact that she perpetuates it is also kind of a way of protecting herself and strengthening her own immortality, which is just such a cool little twist that I'm not sure they're actually going to do anything with. I
know, it's one of those things where it is such an interesting concept, and there actually are a lot of layers to it. Kind of like, well, is she this evil to survive, or is she genuinely this character? But again, this is Big B and Snow's story, so I don't...
Which... I'm just really hoping she's allowed to exist again outside the fiction, like that her story doesn't just end here and they kill her or whatever, that she's just allowed to continue being this weird fable that, you know, perpetuates her own myth. Like, I love that dimension that it adds to the universe.
Did you kill the...
No.
No? Okay.
I already burned the tree. Couldn't do anything else.
Too much bad karma in one episode. You don't want to come back. But... God, that entire final sequence with the transformation and just going hardcore and then finally being shot, that was... My blood was pumping. It was just...
It was good.
It was really good. It was a hell of a way to end the episode, especially because, it's the middle episode. If there's too much build up, that's where a game can really falter. Mm-hmm. And they just ramped it up.
Which I still don't know what's going on, though. Which, again, for a murder mystery, not great.
That's true.
We've kind of gone through the trajectory of the episode. Maybe we should go over the decisions that it measures, because they were pretty skewed when I played. Oh, here's a good one. So the first one was, did you interrupt Snow's eulogy?
Oh, God, no.
Me neither. And I thought that was really interesting, because every Telltale game begins with silence as a valid option when you're choosing your dialogue. But I feel like The Wolf Among Us, more so than The Walking Dead, integrates silence into the choices. So it's a more overt choice. Mm-hmm. And it usually works to service and to leverage Snow White, which I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like an absence so much as it's
helping her. Well, that's probably not the word you're looking for, but it's helping her and helping her establish herself and showing restraint on your behalf. Because I think the other time they do it was with TJ, where like Big B doesn't know what to do with kids, so it's like, just let Snow deal with it. So now that's out of the way. So we covered where we chose to investigate first. With me, and I guess for you in your first playthrough, it was the Trip Trap, which when I played, 44.6% of players did that. Mm-hmm. So we were in good company, considering there are 3 options. And did you offer Flycatcher a job?
Oh, I totally gave him a job, because he seems like a good guy.
Yeah. And he's working for you in the comics, so... Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, oh, we gotta make that connection. So now we covered who burned Greenleaf's tree, which I was among the 15% that did.
Did you say 15%?
15%.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
most people took the better path, I think. Mm-hmm. We're not cruel. And then we both spared Tweedledum, but 53% of us spared him. So that's pretty down the middle as far as choosing to.
I can't blame people for killing him, though.
Yeah,
He's really a piece of shit. So
yeah, especially when he crashed the funeral at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like that. I feel like that, coupled with the notes you mentioned that humanize them, those two totally are meant to inform your decision in that last act.
Yeah, exactly.
So, very cool.
So that does it for our water cooler discussion on episode 3 of The Wolf Among Us, titled A Crooked Mile. Let us know which decisions you chose or which parts you found particularly difficult. And let us know in the comments section. Subscribe to us to be kept up to date on the latest water coolers and scripted episodes.
Were you a horrible person that burned the tree? No. Shame Stacey in the comments.
Exactly. But don't forget to subscribe.
Yeah.
Rena's been embezzling from Fabletown.
Of course, because why half-ass being a complete sleazeball?